So that's a statement from the Civil Aviation Ministry, the MOS. They're confirming that all steps are being taken to ensure that it's minimum inconvenience for passengers in this current situation. And joining us here on India Today now is cybersecurity expert Dr. Satish Rath. Thank you very much for joining us here on India Today. Dr. Rath, now with the latest communication that's come in that a fix has been deployed, how long do you see it taking really for normalcy to creep in for this outage to come to an end?
Thanks for having me on this important topic. So definitely, there is a, good hope that, CrowdStrike has already released the update, and then maximum maybe within short time, we should be seeing normalcy of the operation, getting into space. But this can be confirmed only when the business owners, like aviation, banking, and media outlets, who have been affected, start reporting that, things have been normal. But I think there is going to be a cascading effect for whatever delay that has happened due to the, let's say, outage, because, airline is an industry which is going to, this impact is going to be there for another, 2 days and 3 days, for whatever, cancellations and the delay that has happened. And because this is a global thing, so hope, this can be, contained with minimal kind of time frame. Good to know that, Microsoft and CrowdStrike have already acknowledged that they found the bug, deployed it. But the important part is this should have been expected. So there is definitely something, what the regulators as well as the businesses should have actually worked towards it to prevent it.
Why do you say that, Dr. Rath? Why do you say that this is something that you could see coming essentially?
So let's say, let's understand, where the root cause is. So let's say there is an update in the configuration system from the backend. If we have to understand it in simplified, let's say language, then there is a breakage between the compute and the memory. So when any computing system, there is a breakage between the compute systems and the memory, then the entire system is actually, shuts down. Now, when CrowdStrike has actually initiated this configuration setting, I don't know whether they have already, informed the, let's say, business owners that, they are going to do this deployment, and what is the possible impact, and whether the businesses were also aware that, this kind of update is coming and this can have a possible, let's say, breakdown, and what are the preparedness. So looking at the initial report, it appears that, other than maybe CrowdStrike, nobody was aware, including Microsoft, that, this kind of a disruption could happen potentially and can actually do such a big outage. And this definitely talks about something to learn from it so that, bigger things other than this, can be averted.
Also at this point, Dr. Rath, the question, of course, that everyone's also asking is, what kind of an impact really has it had on India versus other countries globally? In several countries, we're looking at rail networks coming down, media networks that have completely shut off for the last few hours, banking services that have been hit. Here in India, it's largely been limited to airports, to flight ops. Why is that? Is it that we're not as dependent on tech, we're not as plugged in online as other countries?
Yeah, so that's a very important question. So, any connected system or any digital system, the impact is directly proportional to the impact of digitization, in your infrastructure. So, as we understand, I think, aviation is something which is globally connected, and mostly it is using, Windows systems. So that's why we saw a majority of the airline and the airports, facing this glitch. Even London Stock Exchange actually was affected. Even some media outlets were affected. So this definitely tells that, whichever industries, definitely aviation and banking, and maybe some industries have yet not realized that, they are affected. Maybe they will be reporting a little bit late. But as you said that, as our digital infra actually grows, the impact could have been much more worse. But this is already worse. And I think, we should be taking stock of it and then, trying to prepare it for the future.
Yeah, this is the worst IT outage in history. And that speaks volumes of really the impact it would have had. And I'm sure in the next 24, 48 hours, we'll get a sense of what that also means on business terms, so the kind of losses that it's led to globally as well. But keeping this in mind, this particular situation, is there anything that actually can be done by any country, even by India, to kind of counter this kind of a situation, ensure there's no impact if this happens ever again on the country?
that I would say is the most important question. Definitely, these kind of things can be, let's say, prevented. First thing is any digital connected system which is dependent on multi-systems, it is vulnerable to fail. So whenever things are vulnerable to fail, let's say take an imagination of a patient on a ventilator or a flight which is taking us 30,000 feet above, then I think there are always multiple failure backup systems. So same way should be done for cloud. Cloud should be actually declared as a digitally sensitive, vulnerable infra, which is critical for any economy. And when these kind of systems are declared as nationally sensitive and security-wise sensitive infrastructure, they ought to have backup systems. So, very simple things are, where, clouds can be, mirrored, they can be redundant systems, there can be distributed systems. And these are all known facts. If, let's say, in Australia it failed and then, they had a copy in a different country or of a different configuration, they could have actually, saved this, let's say, issue. Let's say the Linux systems and the Mac systems did not get affected, but the Windows systems got affected. So this can be prevented by taking, everyone in the ecosystem, some of the work. As digitization is getting more and more AI-centric and more singular monopoly kind of, let's say, centric. So let's say businesses are also cutting down their cost on their IT as well as their engineering infrastructure, and they are completely dependent on Microsoft. Same way, let's say regulators are also, cutting down their, national, let's say, research infrastructure, and then actually completely getting dependent on Microsoft. So when some outage is happening at Microsoft, everybody is looking up to Microsoft, whereas, they are not actually proactively to solve the system. So my suggestion would be just to 2 or 3, whenever there is a critical cloud system in digital infrastructure, it has to be built on redundant systems and duplicated systems. That is part one. Second is the accountability should be there also with the vendor as well as with the business owner. To cut costs, they should not be cutting down the engineering infrastructure and the manpower so that, they can proactively also solve this system. And third is there should be always multi-systems, in these business critical systems. You cannot be dependent on a single vendor or a single provider. You should be having, your mechanism so that, whenever these kind of outages are happening,
and I think that's something that most experts have agreed with Dr. Rath, that there needs to be a plan B, that everyone can't be reliant on just one system, one big company like Microsoft right now. And as a result of that, as their cybersecurity vendors had a problem, everyone globally is being hit. Dr. Rath, thank you very much for joining us with your expert view on what's really happening. The outage, mind you, has still not been fixed.